G'day folks. Well, I'm going to have a ramble. Time for a bit of a ramble. I love rambling on, as you probably know. I want to do a little vid, just this vid, and let the ones that sort of maybe just starting to follow me and give you a bit of a heads up, and this is a bit of a recap on it all too. Yes. Well, I'll tell you the reasons why I pulled this engine out. Originally I was running around, you probably know, with the little 355 stroker that I'd built up about 12 months ago. And, oh geez, I had some success with it too. It was a ripper, and still is a ripper combination. I've never in my life have experienced the power of this little block. You know, the way I put it all together was incredible. It really was. It wasn't just thrown together. I actually put a lot of thought into building this little engine with the -3 heads, the baby cam, all the little tricks that I'd sort of learnt over my lifetime and applied into this little engine, and it really was a little ripper. It was incredible, and you only got to watch the videos, guys, and get this, it was only on 7 pounder boost. I'd had anticipated there a few times to turn the boost up, and it was probably a good thing I didn't, because I probably would have ended up destroying this engine, and not for the reason of the tune and the capability of this little motor, but it turned out that the little gearbox sort of, well, it could handle it, but it was thrusting forward, and it ended up chopping out the crankshaft on the thrust bearing. So, but that wasn't the reason I pulled it out, guys. The reason was I was running out of oil pressure around the sweeper. Sustained revs, and it turns out that the oil floods up into the heads and cannot return quick enough into the sump. So you starve your sump of oil, and you've got them chock-a-block full of oil in the heads. It's not an ideal scenario, especially when you're bubbling up in the revs. And I only found this out too, guys, with my GoPro that I had mounted on my head, and I was just watching a video there, just checking it over, making sure it was okay before I uploaded it, and I zoomed in on it, and I thought, oh my God, look at the oil pressure was falling away. And I was only around sort of 40 pound. It was a good strong sort of 65, 60 pound, and then all of a sudden it'd just fall away. I mean, the alarm bells were ringing. So I contribute that accumulated to saving that motor. Actually, I reckon it would have fallen away to probably nothing if it hadn't have been for the accumulator. So I was very lucky in that sense, that I picked up on the thrust issue and that I picked up on that oil pressure issue. So really this motor isn't too I haven't done too much damage to it. It's quite easily fixed. But it enabled me, guys, to get this little 308 that I had. I reckon I've had that 24 years, you know, guys. Yeah, I reckon I got this as my son was born. He's 24 in June. And I think I had this motor around when he was born. I bought this little motor. And I only bought it it was just a freshly rebuilt engine that I'd bought. And I had a HX one, not a one-tonner, just a HX Ute, and I put it into that, and I've had it ever since. So it's been a trooper, this little motor. So, and this was the first engine that I had boosted, and oh look, it's taken a real beating. I blew a couple of head gaskets learning. I had fuel issues to start with, you know, leaning out, popping gaskets. I bent a conrod in it because I hydraulicked it when I first put the quick fuel carb on it. I flicked the fuel pump on and I didn't realise the bowls didn't come up, or the floats didn't come up, and they were stuck down. I should have probably given it a little tap or checked it, but I didn't. I just flicked it on, and the pump that I've got is like a bloody garden hose. And it literally just completely flooded the engine and filled the cylinders up. I only had it on for 30, 40 seconds. And that'd be enough to flood the engine. Then I kicked it over and I didn't realise. And I felt it go. She went, whoom! And all of a sudden that stopped. And I drained it all out and I picked it up. Oh no, it was actually right up in the carb hat. It was in the intercooler. Oh, I made a mess of it, and it was lucky I didn't start a fire. God, I was lucky. But anyway, it turns out that's what happened. I bent the rod, and I've been running around on a rod that's, I think it's about 150 thou shorter. I measured it up there the other day, and it was nearly about 4 mil shorter. It's ridiculous. And I was running around 4 years with that, so anyway, I ended up putting in some decent rods. Rick came to the party and offered me some rods and some aftermarket ARP rod bolts. So we've got some better rods than originally were in it. I've had it all balanced. I've had the rods lightened. So the whole lot's completely sort of beautifully balanced. So this motor used to sort of vibrate a little bit, and that's why. I reckon it was because of that bent rod. Just not happy, not the compression would have been down, and yeah, it just wasn't spot on. So, and never balanced. So I think this little engine here will swing around beautifully. That 355, guys, I buzzed that to 6.1, and that was only because I wasn't game enough to lift the revs because of the speed. I really wanted to cap my speed, and the only way was to feel safe about it was to sort of cap the revs. Because if I buzz that to sort of 6,500, 7,000 revs, it's hard to drive, guys. I'm not that experienced yet. I do rely on that rev limiter a lot. So, if I had gone around there at 7,000 revs, I would have just got out of my comfort zone. And so I thought I'll leave it at around 6.1, and I felt really comfortable. And I thought, oh well, let's go up another couple of hundred revs, but I never got that opportunity. So with this one, I may do that once I get a bit better at it, and just sort of lift my revs that little bit more every time. And so it's really good. So we've done the oiling mod on it. We'll get back on track. What I've gone and done, guys, I've modded my sump. I've lowered it down a little bit more, so it sits down sort of 20 mil more. I've got a lot more capacity, so I've put some really big sort of wings on it, you'd call it, pretty much all the way around. A lot of thought went into that too. It wasn't just a thing you sort of bubble in your mind. I've got to think about it. There was 3 or 4 weeks sort of thought gone into it. And I had to mod my pickup to suit. And what I've gone and done there is, now I've got sort of 8 litres capacity, which is incredible. I think I had about 6 litres with that original sump. Now I've sort of gained a couple litres more, which is fantastic. I've got some fittings tapped in. I can tap some fittings into the back of my heads now on both sides. And I'm going to run a scavenge pump, the same as what I've got off my turbo, and run it back into the sump, so externally, and bypass. So now I don't have to worry about the oil having to fall back through the engine, hit the crankshaft, fluff it all up, create all those sort of problems. Hopefully I can get sort of more than half, 3/4 of the oil dragged through the pump. And because I don't want to restrict the oil going up into the heads, because there's a bit of method to my madness. So the idea for me, if restricting the oil to the heads, yes, it will stop running the sump dry, but I really want to keep the oil cool, if you understand what I mean. Because these alloy heads, they're so efficient at pulling heat Now that I've got rid of the intercooler in the front, this is my idea, guys. Run with me on this one. If I can get my radiator, which I have now, working really well, now that I've blocked it all off around the outside of it, and it'll pull so much heat out of the heads and work so much efficiently, now that I've sort of got all that addressed, that the oil will actually get cooled down, because now it's going to flood up into the heads, but it'll get a chance to cool the valve springs. It'll actually, the heads should be able to help cool the oil. So that's the idea. So I think with that sort of methodology that I've got bubbling away in my mind, I reckon it'll work quite well. Plus, I'm going to run the fins, the aluminum fins that I had on the sump previously. I'm not sure if any of you guys I did do a little video on it a while back. Yeah, so I've got some really nice fine aluminum that I'm going to fin the whole sides. I'm not sure if I can do underneath, because now that I've lowered it a little bit, I'm not sure, but we'll see once it's on the ground. But I can do all the sides, and that'll help pull the heat out of the oil that's around the pan. Because it was amazing, like when I'd come back in off a track and let it cool down for say half an hour, and you could tell the oil pressure would just pick right back up again. And by the time I came back in, I'd lose around on average around 10 pound. But that when I went back out half an hour later, I'd gain that 10 pound, because the oil's that much cooler again. Because we only do 4 to 6 laps. So we'll see how this works. Keep an eye on it all, but I'm tipping it's going to work well. And now that I've got a lot more storage, I think my problem of oil heating up, I might be able to combat. I might not have to run an oil cooler, but we'll monitor it and just keep an eye on things. So that's the idea, and that's the whole point of originally pulling the engine out, was to try and have consistent oil pressure. I've modded my pump. There's a video on that, guys. You've only got to look at that. That's an incredible thing that TK came up with. Geez, he's an amazing fellow. What he does with these motors, he's really knows his stuff. So if you ever want to know about it, guys, you've only got to type Google, TK, and there's a lot of oiling tricks he can show you, especially with the engine blocks themselves. And that's one thing I'm going to do. I'm actually going to do a priority oiling mod on this. I'm not going to go to the extent that TK did, but Come Racing do a few basic little mods in the cam tunnel there, and we'll go into that later though, once I start working back on that. Yeah, so that's what I've been up to with this whole the engine debacle. But I think this little 308 is absolutely going to fly, guys. I really can feel it. It mightn't have the torque, but I think that's actually going to suit my application. If I was drag racing, look, I'd want this bad boy in there and the boost right up on it, because you do need the torque to shift the car, there's no doubt about it. But at the circuit racing, I think this little motor is going to run like a beast, and I can't wait to see how much difference it makes with those alloy heads on it. So yes. Yeah, so I've got rid of that intercooler, guys. So that's a fantastic, even forget about like the water injection setup, but just pulling that out, for what it's going to do for the front of this radiator, it's going to get just pure Tasmanian cold air hit it now. So there'll be no heat exchange happening from the intercooler, and then you've got a warm to warmish air hitting the rad. You're going to have that cold air hitting the rad. And I've blocked it all off now. I've really gone in and spent a lot of time on it, and I've basically got it 99% all blocked off, so we've got no leakage points. Everything that hits the front of that car on the nose cone is going to be forced through the rad. I'm going to pull off one of those fans. I'm going to run with the 16-inch still. I'll move that into the centre, and there's a couple of reasons why I want to pull off the 14 inch is because I feel I don't need it. That's number one reason. We're not really stationary for long. We're only lining up for no more than a minute, and then we're gone. And the fans don't work anyway once you're motivating around the track. And that frees me up for a relay too. So, because I need to run the scavenge pump. So I thought, well, that's a win there. It'll save me a lot of wiring. And I'm at the point too now, guys, that I've got enough electrical stuff drawing off my system. With my fans, my scavenge pumps, my fuel pump, I don't really need any more. So I thought, well, if I get rid of the 14 inch, I can quite happily, that's a 30 amp I think. That's a 30 amp fuse, maybe a 20 amp, but I know the little scavenge pump's only a 7 amp draw, so I'm actually going to gain a little bit, which will be nice. So yeah, that's the reason for pulling that off. I'm doing the little mod on the water return, because on the back of the heads there's no way for the water to circulate, so I'm actually putting in some little fittings in the rear of the manifold, and that'll circulate the water out of the rear of the heads, and so you don't get steam pockets and issues happening. So yeah, I'll do another vid on that when I actually get it all plumbed in and on the motor, and I'll show you guys. I've put a little bit of a camber in the front of it too, guys. I reckon I'm about 1.5 degrees now of camber. I reckon I've gained half a degree. I had roughly a degree on it already, but I've packed it in a little bit more, so I've got a bit more camber on it. I've pulled 15 kilograms out of the front. That is fantastic. So that's really going to make a big difference, especially out of the front of the car. More camber, less weight. I really feel, not that I had an issue, guys, even with understeer. I've actually never, well, I did with the cast heads. I must admit, with the cast heads that I ran on it over there, when I first started running around, yes, I did start to get a little bit of understeer, and I could feel it. But since I went to the alley heads, that was a 21 kilo saving. So, and now that I've pulled more out of it, yeah, it's only going to get better. So that's great. I'm really happy with that. The transmission, don't forget that transmission, guys. I'm going to put and that's part of the reason I'm actually going to plumb in this pressure gauge. So we're going to monitor the line pressure coming out of the gearbox for the transmission. And I'm only running, I've pulled out a couple of coolers now, so I'm only running one nice cooler. And I'll keep it really simple. It's this one. I don't know if you can see it, guys. I haven't got a torch on me. You can sort of see it there. It's about, I think it's about 300 by 300 mil. What is it? 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I think it's a 10 pass. And I'm going to make a duct up for that too. So I'll show you when I do that too, guys. And I've got a couple of little tricks up my sleeve. Now that I've got rid of these two front ones here, I've had, they're crap, those things. I don't know why I ran them. It's just one of those things you get in your head, you know, and you think, oh yeah, this is great, I'll call it. And I got rid of about 8 feet of line too. So, whoop, camera's gone, sorry guys. Yeah, so, but I've got the nice big sump on it too, guys. So, on the, where it is, here it is. Yeah, I've got the nice big sort of cast aluminum sump. So, I think combine that with now that I've got a lot more flow back again, and I'll make a duct for that up, I think heating's going to be kept quite under control still. But anyway, that's my little update for now. Have a look at this, guys. I couldn't resist it. I just had to sit it in there. The cage. What do you reckon? Oh, God, it looks good. It looks good. It's actually not perfect in there, but it's just sitting in there, and it just gives you an idea of how good it's going to fit. Oh yeah, and I've had the side intrusion bar in there too, guys. And oh, it's going to clear easy. Oh look, I'll tell you what, he's done a really nice job, Heath. But yeah, once we get this water injection in the engine all sort of dialed in, that's the next job. I really want to do that cage now. I'm actually really excited about it. And I want to do them back arms. So, alright folks, well, I'm going to have a couple of days off work. And so the next vid you'll probably see this little motor sitting in the engine bay. And I'll do a vid then and we'll have another little talk and we'll go from there. Alright folks, well, I'll catch you later.